I realize that the blot is imagined. But if I look at my brother and I do think he's guilty, then I, in that moment, am involved in believing the blot. If I'm judging, I'm the one who's believing the blot. I'm the one who's believing the imagination. And again, we want to remember that our only job is to accept the atonement for ourselves. So the only thing we really need to worry about, worry's not the right word, but the only thing we need to be concerned about, the only thing we need to watch for is truly, 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 with all honesty, what's going on in my mind. And that's my job. Truly, 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 with all honesty, what is going on in my mind? What is it that I am seeing? Am I seeing a guilty brother? Or am I just seeing an innocent brother who's just believing thoughts that we put in the mind? And understanding that it has no reality to it at all. So again, back to the message. Holy Spirit says, when you look at your brother, remember you are looking at me. For there is no separation of any kind. So the blot you see on your brother is a blot you see on me. If you remember who I am, then you may remember that this blot cannot be real. So it must be imagined. Then you may ask yourself, who imagined this blot? Since it is you who perceives the blot, you must be the imaginer. There is great joy in this realization, because if you have done the imagining, you can choose to stop imagining, and the blot disappears. This is when you realize that the blot was within your own mind. Now the blot here is guilt. That's what the blot is. It's guilt. So if I am looking at my brother and I think my brother is guilty, that's always, always, always an error in my mind. And there's not a single exception to that in the whole wide world. That's always, always, always an error in my mind. And Holy Spirit says, and that's the good news. Because if it's in your mind, then you are the one imagining the blot, or you are the one imagining the guilt, which means you can choose to stop imagining it, or you can ask Holy Spirit to help you see differently. And the reason this is great news is because we're never free when we think we see our brother as guilty. I mean, I do know that before I started studying A Course in Miracles, I thought I was happy. I really did. You know, somewhere in A Course in Miracles, Jesus tells us that we aren't happy. And I, called Jesus a liar. I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm happy. How dare you, Jesus, accuse me of not being happy? So the first thing Jesus had to do with me was teach me that I wasn't happy. And indeed, I wasn't. And indeed, I wasn't. There was a lot of stress in my life. There were a lot of people I didn't like. All of this stuff that now I look back on it, I realize I wasn't happy. I was just so far in denial, I didn't even know I wasn't happy. But the truth is, if we're the ones seeing guilt, if we're the ones judging, we aren't happy. It's impossible to be happy carrying that burden around. So that's why it is good news. It's very, very good news that if I see guilt, it's my error. Because all I have to do is change my mind and I am free. I can truly be happy. I can really be happy. If the guilt wasn't in my mind, if it was real guilt, I'd be stuck with it. I'd be victim of the guilt out there. And I could never be happy because of all the guilt out there. But if I accept that any guilt that I see is in my mind, then I am also accepting the freedom of changing my mind and then being perfectly happy. It's really a wonderful, wonderful blessing that we're the one that creates our own pain. Because it also means that, we can change our mind. So again, Holy Spirit says, you may ask yourself, who imagined this blot? Since it is you who perceives the blot, you must be the imaginer. There is great joy in this realization, because if you have done the imagining, you can choose to stop imagining, and the blot disappears. This is when you realize that the blot was within your own mind. So it is through this process of forgiveness that you are healing yourself. See, there's the good news. There's the good news. We're healing ourselves. We're teaching ourselves to be truly happy. Through forgiveness, you take away your pain and misery. And all this you were able to do because your brother, who is me, showed you the blot within your mind so you could choose to be healed. Now this is a great interpretation of what looks like guilt. A great, great interpretation of what looks like guilt. Now, I'm going to go into a once upon a time. A similar story is happening right now, but I can't tell the similar story because I'm not reacting to it the same way. So even though it looks like it's still occurring, the truth is I'm not reacting the same way. So for me, it's not still occurring. So I have to go into a once upon a time. I'm going to say once upon a time on the peace of God. And in fact, for me, this was like last April and May. So it was a little bit ago. There seemed to be a few people attacking Regina Akers online, saying all kinds of stuff about her. One friend, who truly is a friend now, one friend wrote something that was a little more personal, and I was hurt. I was offended, and I wanted to write an email back, defending myself, saying, no, you're wrong, and here's the proof. And of course, I definitely saw that guy as guilty as hell of making up lies about me when he didn't know me from Adam, right? This is how I was feeling. But Holy Spirit in my mind, the first thing I heard from Holy Spirit was, step away from the keyboard. And of course, the reason I was told immediately to step away from the keyboard is because I was ready to fire off a defensive email. So I stepped away from the keyboard and I went over there to the love seat, which is about 3 feet away, and I sat down and I started practicing forgiveness the way Holy Spirit had taught me to practice forgiveness. And one thing that I've been taught to do is, first of all, let go of the thoughts in my mind. So the thoughts in my mind about everything that was said in this email, how unfair it was, how this guy didn't know me, how dare he say that. All of these thoughts I just needed to let go of and not continue to let them spin and talk to me in my mind. Because I had listened to them for a short time, there already was a lot of emotions. Emotions, really that I was being treated unfair is the best way. I mean, they were, anger emotions and that kind of thing, but really they were based on the idea that I was being treated unfairly by what this man was saying about me online. So I had these being treated unfairly emotions. So first I let go of the thoughts, then I still have the emotion. So what I needed to do was just sit and be with the emotions. So that's what I did. I just sat with a silent mind. I let go of the thoughts. I sat with a silent mind, and I just let my mind focus on how I was feeling. And I just felt it. And I don't know how long I did this. Not that long. A few minutes, maybe 10. I mean, I really don't remember now. But literally a miracle occurred, and it occurred so fast that I couldn't miss it. I was sitting there, feeling these being treated unfairly emotions, feeling these emotions, focusing on the emotions, and then, boom, instantly, my perception changed to pure love for this same brother, because instantly I saw that he was helping me to let go of the ego. And I knew there was nothing I wanted more than that. I mean, suddenly, all of these emotions of being treated unfairly, they just transformed. I mean, miraculously. This is why it's called a miracle. They just transformed into pure gratitude and pure love. I swear to God, if that man had walked in my living room door at that moment, I would have grabbed him and hugged him and kissed him and said thank you. Because I saw so clearly that he was helping me to let go of the ego. And that's what I want. It turned into a perfect gift. Yeah, that's it, Peter is saying. That's a miracle. And as you guys may know, those emails still lasted for some time. In the end, I ended up having a reflection of that miracle in form. This man and I are now friends. I mean, we're friends. He even called me a couple of nights ago. We had a great conversation on the phone. We exchange like friends on the peace of God now, asking each other questions. And so that eventually, several months later, that miracle was reflected in form. But it started with being willing to accept the Holy Spirit's interpretation of what seemed to be an attack. And this is the same interpretation Holy Spirit is giving us in this last paragraph of this message. Listen, Holy Spirit says, "So, it is through this process of forgiveness that you are healing yourself. Through forgiveness, you take away your pain and misery. And all of this you were able to do because your brother, who is me, showed you the blot within your mind, so you could choose to be healed." I mean, when our brothers seem to be attacking us, for example, seem to be criticizing us, seem to be hating us, seem to be rejecting us, seem to be using us, seem to be betraying us, the Holy Spirit's interpretation of that is that they are providing us with the opportunity to find everything in our mind that is an obstacle to love's presence so that we can truly see it and let it go and be freer. And yeah, as Peter is saying, thank God for my brothers. In fact, it kind of mixed with the line above that. Above that, Peter wrote beautiful, and what I kind of saw was, thank God for my beautiful brothers. Thank God for my beautiful brothers.